Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today I want to go over what our plans are for our newest territory, which we have called Southward. So for those that don't know, the Kingdom of Wayward, which is actually an associated state within the Empire of Stomaria itself, has agreed to sell one of the plots of land that makes up their claimed territory directly to the imperial family. Now, this particular plot is going to be renamed Southward, and that's nothing more than the fusion of the word south and wayward, because it will be the most southerly point of Wayward, if you like, because they are moving north. It's still going to be a base of operations for them, but they're planning to relocate further north to start anew, if you like, to buy more land, which they can utilize to a greater extent than they're able to at the moment. And the reason that they're selling this plot to us is in part to raise funds for that. So it kills two birds with one stone, because it does expand the Empire of Stomaria itself in the sense that the Kingdom of Wayward, as an associated state, are still going to be purchasing more land, and they fall under our sort of collective umbrella, if you like. But it also helps us because Stomaria itself will own land, it will own territory that will form a protectorate, because it will be private freehold land that's owned by the imperial family, but it is governed by the highest authority of another micronation, in this case King Raoul. Now, whether or not that changes in the future for whatever reason, I don't know. It may become a province if King Raoul doesn't want to continue governing it himself for whatever reason. It will simply be governed directly by a member of the imperial family or by the Stomarian nobility, in which case it will be a province and will have a far more direct say in how it's governed. As protectorate, obviously we do have a say in how it is governed because it is our own land, but we're a lot more hands-off because we want to allow the Micronational leaders that are governing this territory to have a bit more flexibility in what they want to do. And associated states, as the Kingdom of Wayward is private freehold land that's owned directly by that by the highest authority of that micronation, but they have freely joined Stomaria. So obviously we have virtually no control over that because it's not our land and it's not our micronation. So you know, that's why they're an associated state, but that's still nevertheless an integral part of what makes up the Empire of Stomaria, is this association of micronations, this culmination of micronations that are coming together and trying to build something real and something genuine and something lasting. And so that all by the by, our plans for Southward are very much dependent on how long the transition period is, because Wayward is, or the Waywardian community, if you like, is going to be transitioning from that base of operations to their new base of operations over the course of however many years. Now, this isn't an issue. This was always a part of the plan, and I was happy for them to remain there and to manage the territory as they are, because it's handy to have people available to work the land, if you like. If they weren't there, then I'd have to find someone to do it or do it myself, which is something that we may have to do in the future. But that aside, as this this transitionary period goes on, changes will be happening with the territory. So I had a meeting with King Raoul a few weeks ago, and we agreed that the best thing to do would be to strip Wayward back down to a sort of a blank canvas almost. Not in the sense that we're going to be ripping out everything that was ever done there. That was never our intention. But we wanted to give ourselves the flexibility to build something fresh, something new. Now, things like the orchard that was established, or the berry beds, or the vegetable patches and all the rest of it, they may stay in some form or another. They may need jigging about, because there are plans that both myself and Raoul have that may require some adjustment in terms of where things are positioned at the moment. The footpaths, many of those will go because we require the materials for a little project that myself and Raoul have agreed on for the territory, which I'll get onto maybe not even in this video, but in a future video. But what I want to do with Southward is something that I've been thinking about for a little while, because even though that we've been gunning to get a territory of our own, in the sense that we own it, not a huge amount of thought has gone into what precisely we're going to do with it, because it always depended on what territory we got. If we got, an acre of grassland, that's going to be different from an acre of woodland, or an acre of garden-like territory, or you take my point. There's different types of land out there, so we couldn't really plan exactly what we were going to do with that land. Now that we know relatively definitively that it's going to be Southward as our first territory, we can start to think about these things a bit more clearly and a bit more with that purpose in mind. So the reason I wanted to make this video was not just to go over what my initial thoughts were for the utilization of the land, but to also get some suggestions, particularly from Stomarian citizens, because some of the things that I want to go over, and nothing has been solidified yet, will I think, inevitably lead to Stomarian citizens being able to claim a certain amount of Stomarian territory for themselves, and I will get on to this in just a minute. But I think the first thing that I wanted to say is that the initial plan for the territory, once we're in a position to do so, is it actually goes back to just an off-the-cuff comment, as these things normally are, that someone, I can't even remember where it was now, it was somewhere on social media, and they commented on one of our posts about the history of Stomaria, because we posted pictures of some of the forts that we built, me and my siblings, when we were children, and this sort of links back to that, in that sort of civilization building, that creation. That's something we were always interested in, and that's sort of how Stomaria came about in the end. And I wanted to showcase what the sort of things we got up to when we were younger. And someone made a bit of an off-the-cuff remark, something along the lines of, do you still have access to the fort, and have you seen the fort, is it still standing, so on and so forth. And I said, well, no, it's 15 years ago now, probably more at this point, since I last saw it, much less built it. I think it was built probably closer to 20 years ago, maybe. I honestly can't remember now. But we moved from that house, somewhere over 15 years ago, I think, at this point. And the reality is, I don't know if it's still standing. It might still be standing, I don't know. But the follow-up comment was, well, are you going to build it again to commemorate the original fort? And I said, well, no, it's not really the purpose of any land we get. We're not going to start building fortifications or anything like that. But the more I thought about it, and this is something that's been sort of nibbling away at me for a few weeks now, the more I thought about it, the more I thought it might actually be quite a cool idea. And I say cool because it's the only way I can describe it. It's not necessarily a good idea, but it's something that I think will be quite certainly close to my heart. But I think also maybe a feature of Stomaria going forward. And all I could keep thinking about was the Norman conquest of, at the time, Saxon England. And, you know, when they conquered and occupied the land, they built a load of castles, and that was their statement, as if to say, you know, we are here and we are not leaving. And I got it into my head that for every territory that we purchased across the British Isles, maybe we could build a small like keep or a fort of some sort, just a small wooden fortification of some sort. And before this video, I actually thought about this a little bit, because I wasn't really sure what the difference was between a fort and a castle. And in my mind, I had a sort of bias towards castle, and I think maybe it's because I thought like the word fort seemed very American, and I couldn't quite figure out why I thought that. So I actually looked it up, and apparently other sources may say something else, but apparently from what I've seen, a castle is a set of fortifications that is nevertheless someone's place of residence, like a noble or a king. It's their residency that's been fortified, whereas a fortification, or a fort rather, is a fortification that's just a building or is strictly military related. So that is the difference. And I think that's why I think it's quite American, because obviously in America you don't have castles, because using that definition, people don't live in the fortified structure. Whereas historically in Europe and in this case Britain, there are castles as opposed to forts. I think there were probably more castles than forts, if you see what I mean. So I think that's why my sort of unconscious bias, if you like, was a case of castle just seems a bit more British and fort seems a bit more American, and I think that's the reason why. And I don't think I actually knew that, but maybe you didn't know that, maybe you do now. But anyway, this is all going off on my usual tangent. Now, the idea, as I say, was to basically make a statement, to erect a small open-air fortification, very small, humble little thing, maybe just like a ring or a square set of 2-meter fence posts with little points on the end, and then inside that maybe a smaller keep or something to that effect. I think a lot of the kids that are involved in Stomaria, by virtue of the fact that my own daughter, obviously, and King Raoul's daughter, and any of the children of any of the other adult micronationalists that we have, they might like it. But I'm not going to lie, the main reason for it is because I want it. that's about as much as I got on that front. I want to be able to showcase a series of small little fortifications on each of the territories that Stomaria possesses. I'm not talking about associated states necessarily. I don't think Raoul would be particularly keen necessarily on having a little fortification on his new land. But for me, it would just be a very small statement of saying we are here and this is ours. And I quite like that. As I say, it sort of just harks back, I suppose, to the Norman conquest of the Anglo-Saxon England, and that for some reason that just reminds me of that. And not to glorify violent conquest or anything to that effect, but I am a bit of a history buff, and these sorts of things do play a part in Stomaria's development and its growth and how it's governed and all the rest of it. I know I look to history and I take snippets that I find of particular interest and I try to apply them to Stomaria in some way. And I think as a token token basis, token gesture, I think that would be a nice little thing to have, because it links us back to our own past, but it's also quite, it's something that, I suppose, throughout history, particularly ancient or medieval history, that's, what you would do. So there's that aspect that I want to do. I want to be a builder on that front. Now, in terms of the actual utilisation of the wider land, I am thinking that we'll just have to go down the agrarian route and conservationist route to some degree or another, because the land is still over an hour's drive away from where I own residence is. It's not like I can keep chickens there or livestock of any kind and go and feed them and look after them, everything. Once the main base of operations has moved from southward to Wayward's new territory, there will be fewer people in the immediate area to manage the animals that are there now. So animals won't be able to be kept there. But in terms of the actual land itself, now I had a thought which ran something along the lines of, how can I involve Stomarian citizens in the participation or the ownership of this land without losing control of the territory itself? Because for those that aren't already aware, we are big advocates for top-down leadership and control when it comes to micronational affairs. When it comes to territory in particular, there's obviously legal ramifications for divvying up the land between different people. If someone wants to walk away, or someone wants to go in a different direction, or there's an argument or a disagreement, it all just falls apart, becomes very messy. So when it comes to territory, this is why we only ever insist that the territory is privately owned, and in the cases of protectorates and provinces, it has to be directly owned by the imperial family. And so we are not going to lose that power, lose that right. We're not going to be giving away the land itself in a permanent, legal, binding way. However, I think my initial thought process came from, I mean, there's many of them out there. I think probably like established titles or something like that, or companies or organizations like that. I think they're a bit scammy, frankly. But you probably heard them before, where you can buy like a foot of land in Scotland somewhere and you become a lord or a lady. It's, I don't think there's any genuine truth in that. I don't think there's a legal, precedence for that. But what I'm talking about isn't necessarily come buy a plot of land and I'll make you a lord. It's more of a case of, if you become a Stomarian citizen, we will symbolically allocate 1 square meter of Stomarian territory to you. So you can say, if you wish, that you are, private freehold land is something that you have, I suppose, a part ownership of. But I just want to stress that at no point do I mean that this will be legally owned by dozens or hundreds of people. It doesn't mean that there's going to be any semblance of control or authority given to citizens over what we can or cannot do to our land. It's not going to be a case of, you can't build this here because this is my square meter or whatever else. The square meterage rule or plan, if you like, would not involve a specific square meter. It would simply be, Southwood consists of about 900 square meters, so we can allocate 900 square meters to Stomarian citizens. I don't say where that plot is. They don't have a choice in how that's utilized, and all the rest of it. But just going on that bit further, I did ponder briefly as to whether or not we could go a little bit further with that, in that perhaps we could say something along the lines of, for, a citizenship is £1 a month. So we'll allocate a square meter of land to particular Stomarian citizens. And I did think that we could do something along the lines of, if you go over and above that, for whatever reason, if you support Stomaria in that way, as a lot of Stomarian citizens do, they could, instead of contributing £1 a month, they could contribute, say, £5 a month. And then we will allocate 5 square meters to that particular individual. But again, going further than that, maybe we could take those 5 square meters and make it into a specific location, and then we can show them this is your land. What do you want to do with it? Do you want us to do something with it? Do you want us to plant berries or potatoes or whatever else? And the only reason I didn't really want to go down that route is, well, there's a few reasons. First of all, it's very messy, in the sense that Patreon is one of those things that, month by month it changes. Some people become citizens and then they drop out, and then you join a few months later, and then new people join, some people leave forever. It becomes very messy if I'm trying to divide land in that way, because there's no permanency to it, and it's always very fluid. Someone might increase their pledge, might fence off a little area of 10 square meters because they pledge £10 a month, and then all of a sudden they've decided to pledge £25 a month, so I have to find another 15 square meters and divvy it up that way. And there's also the issue of not all the land is obviously usable. It's not like a blank canvas in the sense it's just an open field. I mean, there's parts of it that are, better for agriculture. There are some parts of it which are more forested, and there are some parts of it, obviously, where there will be, literal trees in the middle of that 1 square meter. So, not everyone would be able to utilize the land the same way. So there was that complication to it. And there was also the complication that if, we did go down that route and, someone had a little plot and they wanted to plant potatoes or something in there, and then we planted it for them, happy days, but then nothing grew, and they feel like they weren't getting their just rewards, if you like, because not necessarily that we're neglecting them, but because we're managing it, we would be blamed for any poor harvest or something, that sort of thing, because Sumerian citizens wouldn't necessarily come to southward to look after their own plots. We have citizens in New Zealand, we have citizens in the United States, we have citizens in Mexico. So these citizens aren't going to come over to manage their respective plots. So we would have to do it, and we would have to be responsible for whatever happened to that plot. And it's not really a responsibility I want, because it's just a recipe for disappointment and disaster, or potential disappointment and disaster if things do take a turn for the worse for whatever reason. There's also the issue of if for whatever reason we have to sell the plot. Let's say hypothetically it's not southward, let's just say it's just another random plot somewhere. And we buy an acre of land and it cost us £10,000, and it's just the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden some developing company comes, and all of a sudden all the land around us becomes incredibly valuable, including our own, and we can sell it for £250,000. Now, we would more than likely sell that for £250,000 and then go buy 25 acres somewhere else, just down the road, because obviously the value of the land is great. But if I had the choice of having 25 acres of woodland, 5 miles away from another plot, 1 acre of building land, or a residential property, land where you can build residential property, you have to weigh that up as to what you're looking for. But I would rather have more land if the same value can be acquired in that way. So again, these are all just complications that I wanted to consider a bit more, and this is why I wanted to make this video in advance of actually having the land and carrying out these plans, because I want to know what your thoughts and suggestions are. And I'm talking specifically to Sumerian citizens, or prospective Sumerian citizens in particular, because this is going to affect them. But at the very least, as I say, I would like to symbolically give each citizen a square meter of territory to involve them, just as a sort of token of appreciation. As I said, it is a symbolic gesture rather than a legal ownership of that land. But for those Micronations and Micronationalists, Micronational leaders who do join Stomaria and do lack private freehold land themselves, maybe that's in some way getting around it, in the sense that if you become a Sumerian citizen, a part of Southwood will be allocated to you in some fashion or other. I don't know. These are just ideas that I'm having. These are just thoughts and suggestions that have both come to me and have been suggested to me, and I just wanted to run them by you. Now, the final thing I'd like to say is that there is a plot of land adjacent to Southwood, which, as I understand it, is actually unregistered. And we are, again, having spoken to Raoul about this already, we will consider registering that plot. I think there is a quite long-winded process. I think you might even have to wait like 12 years before you can actually put in the claim for it. But as I understand it, it is unregistered and can potentially be utilised in the meantime. I don't know. Don't know what the rules and regulations are with these sorts of things. Likewise with the fortifications, this is all dependent on rules and regulations and planning permissions and permitted developments and all that jazz. You know, we're not going to break the law. We're not going to go squat on someone's land that we don't have any authority or control over. But if there are plots of land out there that are unregistered and we have the potential to acquire for little financial cost, then that is something we'll obviously pursue. So we will endeavour to keep you updated on that one, but we might be annexing a part of the UK because it's, as I understand it, unregistered. So I just wanted to make you aware of that one as well. And if we do manage to register it and own it at some point in the future, then we shall not merge it with Southwood because it will still be a separate plot, legally speaking. But we will call it Westwood, for instance, because we're going to be original like that. But yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. Like just to put these thoughts and suggestions out there, because I want to sort of have a conversation, I suppose, with the Stomarian community about this, as to what you want to see happen with the territory and what your thoughts are on some of the suggestions that I've made. As I say, we're going to have to go more heavy agrarian in the sense that we need to, going forward, have like fruits, vegetables and that sort of thing, herbs perhaps, but that's quite low maintenance because we won't be able to go there every day to look after these products. So with all of that said, if you did want to become a part of the Stomarian community, please feel free to do so through our Patreon campaign, the link of which I shall leave in the description below as always. You can also find the details of the other micronations that are involved in the Empire of Stomaria in the description below as well. But otherwise, if you did enjoy the video, then please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.